Today's awesome episode is going to be Johna. She's coming back for her Dogman encounters. Episode or two ago, I think it was last episode, was her Bigfoot encounters. So I hope you guys enjoy this story. And without further ado, I'm going to get into it. And then after that, I have one Reddit user short Dogman encounter. Here we go. I moved into my current place in April of 2004. To get an idea of the layout, I live off a dirt road in a small modular home with 1.5 acres. I have neighbors on both sides of me, including an older lady that lived behind me, down a long lane. And behind her place is a lot of woods. On the other side of the road is a farming field about 1/3 of a mile long straight that leads into the woods. I didn't notice anything strange until that July. I was sitting outside, kind of enjoying listening to the frogs. It was about 10 minutes when I heard a long, loud whistle, almost like a caribou. It seemed to last for about 20 seconds. Then it would stop in about 5 seconds. Then it would start back up. It sounded like it came from the woods behind me. At that moment, I noticed the frogs had gotten very quiet. Each time the whistle would start up, it sounded as if it was getting closer. I had sat out there for another 20 minutes, trying to contemplate what this was. The repeated whistle was heard going on the other side of my neighbor's house, away from me, into the cornfield across the road, into the field across in front of my place. But whatever it was, it avoided any type of light and or being seen. That's when I went into the house. This happened for 6 years in the month of July. Not just the long whistle, but we do have a lot of coyotes in the area as well. A lot of times we hear the coyotes yipping, and then that's when you hear a deeper, gut-curling howl among them. This happens quite often, but in different parts of the woods in my area. After a few years, we added 3 other dogs to our family. We still had Buddy, and added a collie mix, Norwegian Elkhound, and a Rottweiler to our mix as well. We had built a chain link fence out back up against the house because the Norwegian Elkhound liked to go explore the area. And with having coyotes around, I felt better having to put her in the fence. Between the years 2006 to 2017, we had found in the fence 3 dead rabbits at different times. They wouldn't be bloody or mangled, but their necks would be broken. I would notice this before I let the dogs outside. It was as if those rabbits were placed there by something. In 2011, not sure on the day, at 11 p.m. my daughter was in her room listening to music, and I was in the living room watching TV. I heard a loud thud on my roof. I lowered the volume of the TV, then heard walking. It was pacing to one end of the house to the other. The steps sounded bipedal and loud with every step it took. Then it circled in one area, the area where my brother had shot his gun outside in the air, and the bullet had went through my roof coming back down. So I had a bullet hole through the roof of the ceiling. The circling had stopped. Then I heard sniffing, like a dog. This went on for a few seconds, then I heard digging. I started to panic, because I seen 2 claws come through this hole. The first thing that came to mind was Palms 27. Years ago, I had a fortune teller tell me if I ever got scared to repeat Palms 27. It wasn't that she had said it, it was how she looked at me when she said it. Then I heard a car come up the road. The digging had stopped. The car had passed the house. Soon a second car had passed. Then I heard 2 steps on the roof go over towards the end of the house. November 2017 at 4:30 a.m. I was on my way to work. I driven to the end of the road and then turned right onto another back road that led to the main road. When I turned right, I noticed red eye shine. It was looking across the road into some woods, as if it was chasing something, and it was glancing to see where it had went. The eye shine was very different. They wasn't as big as a Bigfoot, but they seemed to glow red, and every time it would move its eyes, it seemed to almost as if it was animated. It had turned its head towards my car, then back towards the woods. Then it had turned the opposite direction, then walked back to the cornfield. I couldn't see its eyes then. When I drove where it was standing in front of the corn facing away from me. The farmer still had corn growing there and only had harvested about 4 rows of it. As I drove past, the only thing I seen of it was the back side, only from the waist down to the back of the knees. It didn't have a tail, but it was hair covered. I kept my eyes on it as I passed. It just stood there. But as I passed, it had turned its head to the side, watching me and smiling. I knew it wasn't a Bigfoot, because if it had to turn its head, it would have turned its whole upper body to see my car. Needless to say, I punched the gas. There is another sighting in Monroe County that sounds very similar to mine. It happened about 5 miles from me on a Dogman website. I had reported my sighting to them, but I guess they just blew it off because I haven't heard anything back from them yet. In May 2018, it was around 4:50 a.m. I was on my way to work. Yes, again. I was 7 miles away from home. I had just passed through a very small town. I was almost a mile out. There was a vehicle coming from the other direction. I had my dim lights on. I noticed the dog had started to running across the road, a ways in front of me. I slowed down the car, but what had caught my eye was the dog was moving very strangely. It seemed to be running on all fours, but with a closer look, it was bent over running on 2 legs. Its front paws were bent in front of it, just inches away from the pavement. The lower half was much dog-like, stronger back legs and with haunches. It had its tail between its legs. Its snout was broad, like a Rottweiler, but a little bit longer. It had its ears back at this time. I didn't notice that the other car getting closer, hoping whoever is driving don't get freaked out. Then my attention went back to this Dogman. After it crossed the road, it stopped and faced my car. It squatted like a dog. While doing that, hands spread out like fingers on the ground in front of him. It stuck its ears straight up, similar to a German Shepherd. Its chest was like a man's and built like a basketball player. It then turned its head to look at the car behind it. Then it turned its head back to me and smiled. The teeth were very large, almost too many for its mouth. Just a moment before the car had passed me, I quickly turned my cargo light on, and my Subaru Baja kept looking forward and kept both hands on the wheel. I was scared it was going to jump into the bed of my little truck at the time, but it didn't. I think the cargo light made it take off into the field. Later that year, my daughter, who's 22 years old, had moved into a camper with her boyfriend on my property, 60 feet away from my house. It started out fine for a month. Then her boyfriend would tell me that there was something with red eyes that would stare at them at night. My daughter would leave for work early like I do. She'd come into the house to get ready. She told me multiple times there would be a large dog with red eyes sitting at the Amish's fence. Our new neighbors, after the lady behind us moved out. Watching her as she walks to the house. Currently, she and her boyfriend now stays in the house. 2020 to present. I usually stay up late listening to podcasts. One night, about 2 months ago, I'm sitting in the living room at night. I glanced out a window in another room and noticed a red blinking light. It's a very odd shape. It came up to the upper right corner of the window. I just passed it off as a cell phone tower. They're always putting those things up in a day. The next night, the same thing. The odd blinking light again. Monday night came around. I looked towards the window. There was no red blinking light. After I got home Tuesday, I walked on the side of the house where I've seen the blinking light, where it was coming from, and noticed a padded down grass area in front of the window where something has been standing. I then looked through the window to where I sit in the living room. I observed where I was and had to look through the window with one eye to see me. I then followed the padded down grass. I couldn't find any footprints. It went down towards the Amish place. I then went back towards the house and noticed another path leading to my daughter's bedroom window. There is currently a trail cam mounted towards the windows. Haven't got anything on it yet. A few weeks ago, my daughter and her boyfriend were on the way home. She had been driving and turned onto our road. Her boyfriend looked out the passenger side window and seen this Dogman running next to her car. He had told me it was very tall, large head, and a snout and ears that stuck straight up. and he couldn't understand why he didn't hear it running next to the car. My daughter had seen it the same time and then sped up. It shortly gave up chase, but it really scared my daughter. Now, 3 weeks ago, I have let my dogs, 3 Rottweilers now, out in the fence area. They were barking and growling. When I had opened the door to let the dogs in, I glanced at the Amish's fence and noticed some movement. I could only make out some of, but not all. It has a very big head, broad shoulders, ears stood straight up, red eye shine. Height, I'd say, looks about 7.5 feet tall. I couldn't make out a whole lot. There isn't a lot of light that reaches that backyard, and Amish don't believe in having electricity. I know it's not just us it's curious about. Every now and then at night, I let the dogs in the house because of their barking. I've seen the Amish man outside with his flashlight and rifle walking around this house. And that's the end of her story. Now, I fear for the Amish because, they don't use electricity. They don't believe in it. And I've listened to a lot of Dogman encounters where they try to find a way to get in. And they'll go through your window. They would check your door handles to come in and everything. And if they don't have that kind of technology to keep them safe, door locks or whatever, I have no idea about the Amish. But I really wonder what's going on. I wonder what's their point of view as well. And I want to message her and ask her about that and see what she says about, his encounters and what's going on if they talk to her. Now, this is one heck of a story. I can't believe it. I mean, she was having Bigfoot encounters from 1979 up to 2000, 2004, and then Dogman encounters now from 2004 to present 2021. So it's really cool that she's able to, let this out, tell her story. Because there's people out there that are terrified. And they're so scared that they don't want to say nothing because a lot of times people ain't going to believe them. But we're living in a world now where we should be able to express what we feel. Even if you think that person's lying, let them say what they got to say. Because with every bit of lies that you think they are, carries a little bit of truth. And I've always believed that. So this is just one amazing story. And it's so similar to my friends in Kentucky. They are going through a Dogman problem. And they only know this because I told them this. Because one time, it's happened a few times, and their daughter has seen this creature out her window, and that was a different house a couple years back, and then now they're in this other house, and they found footprints. They thought it was a man's in the snow going up and around the house and standing at the window. But when I had her send me the pictures of the footprints, because I was curious, because they're in Kentucky. They live by a lake of water and trees and forests behind their house, in front of their house actually. And the footprints has 3 toes with long nails and everything. And I asked just a couple of days ago an update of what's going on because she has a trail cam as well put up, but she's not checked any of the pictures yet. But there was little dog prints that she said, smaller dog prints that were doing the same thing. And I've actually heard of encounters where an alpha dogman would carry a pack of other dogs or coyotes and follow them and be like the master, So their stories are almost similar in those type of ways of what's going on. I do fear for Johna. I hope that the dogmen never get in. I don't know what what its motive is, other than trying to scare someone, But I pray for her safety, and I hope everything works out, and I hope it doesn't get no crazier than this. But she's a great person, and I'm glad that she decided to tell her story for you guys to listen to. Now, for the next story, this is from a Reddit user, and it's a short one, but it's 2 stories, and I'm going to go ahead and start. So this comes from Reddit user Jedi_Master_Bates. It's titled, My Encounters with the Dogman of Kentucky. These are my encounters with the creatures known as Dogman while living in Kentucky. They still haunt me to this day, and I thought I'd share them with all of you. Story 1. I was 8 years old living in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. It was the summer of 2012, and it was a hot one. One summer night, I woke up about 11:30, 12 a.m., and I was sweating like heck, so I walked over to the window to crack it. That's when I saw something in the tree line by our stock pond. We owned no animals other than a small terrier, but the previous owners were commercial farmers. I watched for about 5 minutes before it emerged, and when it did, I was horrified. It was a wolf-like creature, about 6-7 feet tall and partially covered in dark gray hair that shone in the light of the full moon. It walked out on 2 legs, then very quickly dropped on all 4s and ran the 100 or so yards to the stock pond in mere seconds. It drank for a while, then stood up on 2 legs again, and I got a really good look at it. The thing was horrible looking. The fur was all patchy, very shiny, and looked like it was covered in some kind of injuries. Years later, when I saw the 3rd Harry Potter movie for the first time, I saw the werewolf, and that almost exactly what it looked like. It then took off across the old cornfield and into the woods on the other side. I had heard stories of this creature, but never really believed them until last night. I heard a week later, while out around town with my folks, that there had been an attack at a nearby farm, and 3 hogs and 1 horse had been eaten and ripped to shreds. That was my first, but not last, encounter with Dogman. Story 2. I caught a glimpse of the things consistently ever since the first sighting, but never got another good look at one of them until fall of 2015, a month before we moved to Maine. It was dusk, and I was outside with some of my friends playing with our Nerf guns, as young boys do. Those were the good old days. Anyways, after a while, we got bored and started a fire. We told dirty jokes and laughed for a while. But then we started hearing noises in the woods, and the laughter died down. We all retreated to the woodshed and armed ourselves with axes, pitchforks, and the like before returning to the fire. About 10 minutes later, something rustled in the woods, about 20 yards behind us. But no one dared to look and see what the heck it was. Finally, my friend Jeremy turned around to look, and he screamed he let out could have brought down a barn roof. That's when we all turned around and saw one of them, except this one was much, much taller. I'd say 8.5 to 9 feet tall, and it was pure muscle and gray hair. It was on all 4s sniffing around the barn, but when Jeremy screamed, the thing looked at us, stood up on 2 legs, and snarled. That's when my dad came out of the house with his shotgun and screamed, "What in God's name is going on?" We all just pointed and screamed. Then he looked at it and yelled, "Go on, get!" and shot at it twice. It ran into the woods, yelping, as I think it had been hit, and we all went inside and locked the doors. My dad sat in his chair with his shotgun the whole night, and I swore I could hear scratching along the side of the house until daylight. Turns out, when we went outside the next morning, there were claw marks on the overside of the house. After everything was quiet until we moved, and I've never seen anything like that since. Now, that is a very incredible story because if you know anything about dogmen, when you try to fight them or Sasquatch, shoot them and stuff, they come back in packs. And dogmen, I think, may be just a little bit more worse. And they're revengeful. They will try to kill you. And I'm just glad that these guys stayed safe, It's an amazing story. I would hate for anybody to encounter one. If you would have asked me a year ago if I thought werewolves existed, I would have laughed. I'd be like, no. But ever since I came across this cryptid, it's amazing. I can't believe it. And I hope if I ever have the unfortunate timing to have an encounter with one, I hope it's a good one. Same with Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Just amazing stories, guys. But if you guys have any stories and you want to come on and tell them yourself or have me tell them, you can send me your stories and encounters and experiences to my email. That is realsne_stories@yahoo.com. That's REALSNE_STORIES@yahoo.com. I would love for you guys to subscribe if you haven't already. You can like and comment And also, I have a group page on Facebook called Real Supernatural Encounters. I would love for you guys to join that as well. But other than that, I think that ends our stories for today. I hope you guys have a good one. See you later.